Every path you choose has a destination. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. But that road leads to destruction. Narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are few who find it. All right, we are back in 1 Samuel 8. Steve preached from 1 Samuel 7 last week and did a great job. I listened to the sermon this week. Thank you for him for doing that last week. But this week, we now move on to the 8th chapter of 1 Samuel. And isn't it funny how that the Israelites kind of illustrate us sometimes? They get something right, and then they immediately follow it by doing something wrong. And isn't that kind of how we tend to be in our lives, you know? We get stuff right, and we get stuff wrong. And this is really what's happening here, because Israel has gone from repenting and kind of making things right to now making a terrible decision. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever seen a car wreck. Anybody in the room ever seen a car wreck before? A lot of you, okay? Did you see it coming? Or did you just kind of see it like, you get behind people now that are on their phones a lot, and they're all over the road, and it's like there's going to be an accident if something doesn't change, you know? And I've seen a couple of wrecks myself, pretty traumatic ones actually, and you could just almost see it coming. Samuel, in 1 Samuel 8, is watching a national train wreck. The nation is on this path to a train wreck, to destruction. And so they are making some choices that will ultimately lead to their demise or a horrible choice. And we tend to kind of be that way in life. Like, it's not one choice that destroys us, it's a whole bunch of choices that destroy us. And that's really kind of the case here. The Israelites make a whole bunch of choices that ultimately lead to a decision that they later regret. That's why I've titled the message today, if you wanted to know how to do this, how to make a decision you'll regret. Trying to kind of be funny or sarcastic a little bit, and it's not really that funny, I guess, but because I think all of us in this room probably have regrets. We all have things that we wish we had done different. And the reality is I can't change the past, but I can change the future. I can't change what I've done before today, but I can change what I do after today. So moving forward, moving past today, I can learn from the Israelites here, and we're really going to look at the reasons why they made the decisions they made and what ultimately led to them regretting the decision they made, and how you and I can, moving forward, make decisions that will not ultimately lead to regret. I want to make decisions that I think, man, that was a good decision. And I think you all want to do the same. So let's begin reading in verse number 1 of 1 Samuel 8, and we'll look at what God's teaching us here in this passage. Verse 1, now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he had his sons judge over Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside their dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. So it's kind of sad. Samuel has 2 boys, and those boys, because of the age that Samuel is getting to, and because of the size of the nation of Israel, and it's basically about the size of California, which in our kind of thought process is big. But imagine if you walked everywhere, rode a donkey everywhere. And here's an older man now, Samuel, who can't get through all of Israel. So what he does is he takes his boys and he sends them to the southern part of Beersheba to do what he's doing in the northern part. So his sons are kind of serving as prophets and priests and leaders in the country of Israel, more in the southern part of Israel. But as we see here, his boys become corrupt. And I don't think you can blame Samuel for this, in the sense that I don't think it's not like Eli's situation. Remember we talked about Eli. Eli had corrupt kids, and he had corrupt kids, and it was really on Eli. I don't think Samuel was that way. I think that really what happened to these guys is money got to them. Money really changes people. It really kind of takes people that maybe had good ethics and good morals, and it changes them. It can change you for the good or the bad in a lot of ways. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money, but these boys obviously fell in love with money. So rather than giving justice to the right cause, they gave justice to the highest bidder. And that's what's happening here in our text. So they come to Samuel, and they say to him in verse number 4, then all the leaders of the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So here we see kind of the first thought process that's going through the nation of Israel that led to a decision that they will ultimately regret is, one, if you want to make a decision you'll ultimately regret, number one, do what's easy. Do what's easy. I know you OCD people are dying this morning because this screen went out and it's just on this side. Okay, look, I'm sorry, we just had a malfunction and we can't reset it till in between services, so you're going to have to get over it, all right? Because I can't give you the points because the points are not in the middle, they're on the side, so we have to leave it this way. So just chew gum or do something to get yourself through the service. Do what's easy. I can just see it because I can see the looks on your faces like you're doing but they turn the other screen on. We can't turn the other screen on. So anyway, this is a situation where God eventually is going to give Israel a king, right? Because we know that he talks about the establishing a kingdom. The prophets prophesied. He talked about establishing a kingdom. Right now, it was led through judges and prophets. This is what's happening in the country. God's not necessarily given them the okay that it's time for a king. They know that one's coming, but they want the timetable instead of letting God set the timetable. And the problem is that you would think rightfully so, Samuel's boys would just kind of slip into Samuel's role. But Samuel's boys are corrupt, and they need to be confronted. And what I see happening here is that rather than the elders of Israel going and confronting Samuel's sons and telling them, look, you're greedy, you're stealing money, they just thought, the easy way is let's just make a king. Let's just change how we rule. And this is a lot of times what we do in our lives. Rather than doing the hard thing, which, is it hard to confront people? Yes. It's incredibly uncomfortable. Is it hard to deal with tough issues? Yes. A lot of times what we do is the easy way is just to quit. The easy way is just to throw up my hands and give up doing the hard work of confronting, repenting, and changing. The easy way is let's just do something different. That's normally kind of how we kind of approach life, is rather than doing the hard things, we do the easy thing, and the easy thing often leads to regret. The path of least resistance is often the one that leads to regret. And so it's important that as we go through life, there are times where we have to do hard things. We have to have hard conversations. We have to have difficult conversations. We have to have conversations that we know are going to hurt the individual that we're speaking to. Not physically, but it's going to hurt them on the inside. My wife and I had one of these last night. Yesterday we had, my kids are millennials, so we do all millennial stuff. So millennials do a baby gender reveal. Right? And because that's what millennials do, Are you millennials with me in the room? That's what you do, yes. So we drove to Springfield, Missouri yesterday because we're having a baby gender reveal, And so what they did is they filled these balloons up. They blew these balloons up, and inside the balloons was different. It was either was blue paper or pink paper. And then we all stood together and we popped the balloons. And then because Matt and Rach didn't know what they were having. So we popped the balloons and it came out pink. So we're having yes. Pray for that girl because she will be surrounded by a lot of males. So anyway, so we had this big reveal. And so it's a real quick trip. We got into town about 1 o'clock and we took Courtney, our daughter, to lunch and we went to the reveal and we drove back home last night. And we're in the car and I like to talk to my wife, and we're having a conversation. We're talking about some what I would think was relatively deep stuff. And this is exactly what she said to me. I wrote it down. Can I say something to you that may hurt you? I tightened the seatbelt just a little bit more. And I just say that because it was something I needed to hear. Was it easy for her to do that? No. Who likes doing that? If you like doing that, you're really kind of sick. You probably need to get psychological help. Or you're an abuser, one of the two. Which you do need counsel then too. But my point being that I think we're all uncomfortable sometimes with having hard conversations with people. But I will say that after Karen and I have been married now for 27 years, our marriage is where it is because we've had a lot of hard conversations. Honestly, the easy thing would have been to divorce. I mean that sincerely. It's just kind of like, that would be the path of, rather than kind of dealing with the elephants in the room, let's just kind of move to another house where there are going to be elephants there too, probably. Not probably, there will be. But that's kind of what we do in life, isn't it? We just go from what's easy to what's easy to what's easy. And this is what is happening here. They don't want to go and confront Samuel and his sons. And they don't want to deal with the hard issues that come with repentance and the pain and the tears. They're just like, we want a king now. And I just want to warn you, if you always do what's easy, you will regret it. You will regret it. Do the hard thing. Do the difficult thing. Walk through the tough part of life. You will not regret that. Notice what else happens then in verse number 6. So how is Samuel going to respond to this? First of all, they've stereotyped him. I mean, I'm not stereotyped, it's who he is, but how do you like somebody coming up to you and going, you're old. You're old, you can't do your job no more. You don't relate to the kids anymore. I mean, that's really honestly what point is that going to happen to me? In the sense that as I pastor here year after year after year, what point are they going to go, dude, you're old? Maybe sooner than later based on the reaction. So we need to get a fresh voice. We need to get a young voice, and this is really what they're doing. So imagine you hearing that. Imagine what he's dealing with here. So he says, you're old and your sons do not walk in your ways. And man, would that be brutal to hear? So he's emotional here. Now notice what it says in verse number 6. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. What really broke his heart was not the fact that they called him old, and not the fact that they pointed out that his kids are a mess. But what broke his heart is the fact that they didn't want God around anymore. Give us a king who will take the place of God. He was upset. He was emotional. And that's really what broke his heart. So I want you to look at the last of verse 6. So Samuel prayed to the Lord. Now this is a guy that did something right, so I want to point that out here, and I want to point it out to you as well. So 1, do what's easy if you want to make decisions of regret. Number 2, do what everybody else is doing. Notice what it says in verse 5. I kind of got ahead of myself. Do what everybody else is doing. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So what's based on their decision? Well, everybody else is doing it. Everybody else has a king. We want to have a king. They wanted a king like everybody else. Every country that's cool has a king. We don't have a king. We're not cool. I grew up in a real small Christian school. I went to a real small Christian school from the time I was in first grade till I graduated from high school. And we had the worst thing ever. We had to wear uniforms every day. Khaki pants, and you know what I find out now? I'm wearing uniforms every day. Khaki pants and polo shirts. That's my uniform, But I had this uniform. They had to be certain colors and yada, yada. And you know what the big talk about our school was? Man, I want to go to a public school where you can wear whatever you want. I want to be like everybody else. I don't want to be here. This isn't cool. We wear uniforms here. They read the Bible to us here. I don't want to be here anymore. There's great pressure in our culture to conform, is there not? Most people do what they do not because they feel passionately that it's what God wants them to do, but they do it rather because everybody else is doing it. We want what we don't have, thinking that it'll bring us what we're missing. Because everybody is doing something is not the best reason for why I should do it. It really, honestly, takes courage to go against the grain. To say, I'm not going to live my life based on how you want me to live. I'm going to live my life based on how God wants me to live. But the nation of Israel is caught up into nation watching and looking at nations and what's cool and what's acceptable and what's trendy and what is everybody else doing and what will make us cool and what is acceptable by society. And they're like, we want that. And what would make us cool as a nation if we had a king? That would really put us it would put us in the cool group of the UN. We'd be in the UN now. They'd accept us because we have a king. And I'm going to just tell you right now, there's a lot of things that have happened in this world that the herd was doing that led to some poor decisions. We look at situations like Hitler, we look at people like led nations like Hitler, and we say, how could a group of people be so influenced? Because it's just you accept what everybody else is doing. What do we talk about now? The courageous few who hid the Jews or stood up to Hitler and his regime. These are the people that we talk about now. But you had millions upon millions of people just doing it because this is what everybody else is doing. It's the herd type mentality. And I want to tell you what, if you just do something because everybody else is doing it, you will regret it. Stand, even if you have to stand alone. If you want to have regret, accept what everybody else is doing as the right thing and do it. We're in a massive cultural shift in our society. And it's just, you just see it in the polls. Like you see it in the polls, like in relation to marriage, for example, and the sanctity of marriage and the institution of marriage. And you see how it's just shifting so dramatically because we're accepting as a culture and we don't want to be on the wrong side of history. So we'd rather be wrong with the Bible and on the right side of history. And that's a bad way to make decisions. You want to have regret, do what everybody else is doing. It led me to my third point, which I already read you the verses about and got ahead of. If you want to make decisions you regret, number 3, don't pray about it. Don't pray about it. So Samuel is emotional, right? He's emotional here. They told him about that. They called him old. They said, you can't do your job well anymore. Your sons are losers. And what really bothered him, though, was there was no king. So Samuel is upset. He's emotional. I'm sure that there were some things going through his head. Like, oh, you going to point out my kids' issues? Let me tell you about all yours, Junior. Your kid's a mess. I'm sure that he wanted to retaliate. He wanted to be angry and kind of snap back at them, but he doesn't do it. What does the text say that he does? But so Samuel prayed to the Lord, and this is really, really wise to do. So if you're really emotional, be careful with your emotions. They cause you to say things and do things that you will later regret. Anybody testify to that? Boy, it seemed like the thing to do at the moment. So last night, we were in Springfield, and if you're in Springfield, you got to go to this place called Hertz Donuts and get a donut. Anybody ever heard of Hertz Donuts? Okay, yeah. They're cupcakes in the form of donuts, and they are awesome. Anyway, so every time we go to Springfield, we go to Hertz, and they're having a lot of activity in downtown Springfield, and the place where Hertz is next to, there's a parking lot, and we're trying to find a spot, and when I pull out of I'm trying to find the spot, and I come around, and there's this car coming, and I see him coming, so I stop, and there's a guy in the passenger seat, and the window's down, and I got my windows down, and he yells at me. And he's like, you just stop right there. You know what flesh wanted to do? A, accelerate. And B, man, I wanted to lash out so bad, like stick my hand out the window and go, what's your problem, bro? That's what I wanted to do. I don't know what that would have accomplished, but I'd have felt better. So we just had a stare off. I tell you that to say that, man, what my emotions wanted to do was not healthy. You ever been there? You ever had somebody say something to you, and maybe they said it to you in complete innocence, and man, it produced something in you, and you just wanted to punch them right in the face? Aren't you glad you didn't punch them right in the face? Your husband or wife ever said anything to you that produced this emotion in you? Okay, so the point here is, look, if you want to do something regret, just react totally on your emotions. Whatever your gut tells you to do it. Go for it. Push on the gas, see what happens. It's a bad way to live. What's the better way to do? Pray about it. Pray about it. Okay, God. Now, sometimes you got to pray real fast. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm feeling. Is this what you would want me to do? What do you want me to do, God? God, please help me right now. And I believe that if you call out to the Lord, He will help you. The problem is we never engage God. We just engage our bodies. We feel emotion, we do what we feel, rather than praying about it. Praying about it gets God in the picture. Okay, God, come here. What should I do? Probably wouldn't step on the gas, Mark. You're not probably going to preach tomorrow because you're going to be in the hospital. Probably shouldn't yell at the guy because you don't know what's going on in this guy's life. I mean, he yelled at you, but just because somebody yelled at you doesn't mean you should yell back at them. That doesn't show a lot of self-control and the Spirit being evident in your life. So you get God involved. And that's really what Samuel's doing here. If you want to make a decision you regret, don't pray about it. Number 4, to move on quickly here. So he prays about it. And then look at what God says to him in verse 7. And the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. This is really sad. He's like, give them what they want, but don't take it personal, Samuel. They've not rejected you, they've rejected me. Then verse 8, according to all the works which they have done since the day I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, which they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. So he goes, now before you actually give them a king, you need to warn them that this is what this king's going to be like. And what is this king going to be like? Verse 10. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king, and he said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s, will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourself, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. So this is what he told the leaders of Israel. Okay, God says you can have a king, but I just got to warn you, this is what's going to happen. He's going to take your kids. And he's going to make your kids serve him. So they're going to be used to serve him in his palace and the people that he has favor with. He's going to take your boys and he's going to send them to war to fight for causes that he believes in. This is what your king is going to do. He's going to take the best of your land. You think you have a choice land? You have a king. That king can walk in and say, that land's mine. And I'll kill you to get it. He's going to tax you, which wouldn't we all be cool with 10%? But we're going to tax you. This is what he's going to do. So he warns them. He's giving them a solemn warning. If you want to make decisions that you regret, then you do what they did in verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. So number 4, if you want to make decisions that you'll later regret, ignore wise warnings. Ignore wise warnings. What he's doing here is he's saying, I'm going to show you what will happen when you have a ruler over you who doesn't fear me. There are 2 ways that government is described in the Bible, okay? The first way that government is described in the Bible is as a great tree. And is there nothing cooler than being under a great tree? You know, it's a hot day and the wind's blowing and you have a tree and it's full of branches and leaves and it's a cool place to rest, to lean up against the tree. Government can be that way for us. It can provide cover and shelter and comfort. That's one way that government is described in the Bible. You know what the second way it's described? As a beast. An animal with enormous power. That's the second way that it's described. Not just as a great tree, but as a beast. What happens to governments with enormous power? They oppress the people that are under it. And what he's saying is, okay, you're going to have a king, but this king doesn't reverence me. This king cares only about himself. He'll be a very selfish individual. He will not seek me. He will not care about me. And he will be a beast to you. This is what you're getting. He is warning them. And you know what they said? Don't care. Don't care. Give us what we want. You ought to get down on your knees every night and thank God for people who warn you. People who say, don't go this way, man. It leads to bad things. Because usually we hate people that warn us, right? Because I know the right way. I've made up my mind. This is the correct way to go. And people who say, I'm not sure that this is the way, man. This is not going to end well for you. But we get so stubborn. We're such stubborn people. And we decide that this is the way and this is the direction that I should go. And nobody going to speak any truth into my life. That's where they got. Man, if you've got your head down and you have decided to go this way and you have a parent or a friend or anyone that's close to you in your life that's trying to speak warnings into your life, man, pick your head up and listen. Open your ears and listen to what they have to say because they may be saving you from a ton of regret. But what did they decide? They said, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, no, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. This is really ironic, isn't it? I don't want God to fight. God did a pretty good job of fighting for him, didn't he? Hey, how are we going to take Jericho, God? Well, okay, so how we're going to do it. We're going to walk around it one time a day for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, we're going to walk around it 7 times and scream real loud. That's our plan? That's our plan. Okay. What happened on the 7th day? What happened when they did exactly what God said? The walls came down and God delivered the city into their hands. God done a pretty good job with them, hadn't he? Remember they're fighting one battle and God caused the sun to stand still to help them. Remember God killed, what was it? 200 and some thousand Assyrians just with the one angel. God's done a pretty good job of defending them, but they're like, no, God, we don't want you defending us. We want a king who will defend us. We want a man that we can see and touch and feel, and we can point to and say, that's our king, and he's going to take care of me. We don't want God anymore. Verse 21, and Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. Verse 22, so the Lord said to Samuel, heed their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his city. Number 5, you want to make a decision you regret? Choose man's way over God's way. I'm a firm believer in this. I believe that people want leaders in their life. I believe it. I think this is proof of it. I mean, I think that, when I lived in Chicago for 6 years, and when I was in Chicago in the late 80s and early 90s, the big thing there was gangs, and it may still be. And we used to talk about how people want leadership, even if it's a gang leader. I want somebody telling me what to do. I want somebody instructing me and leading me. This is the issue with life. We want leaders. We want somebody to lead us, but we reject the ultimate leadership, which is God. People want leaders, they just don't want it to be God. It's kind of like, I feel like this is where we're at in our country right now. We want liberty and justice for all, we just don't want God in our country. That's pretty foolish. The reality is that if you don't have God in the situation, things end very poorly. So we want liberty and justice, we just don't want God. We don't want God involved in our government. We don't want God involved in our lives. We don't want God involved in our homes, but we want liberty and justice. No, it is God that gives us freedom. The reality is that every path that I choose has a destination, and every path you choose has a destination. This is how Jesus described it in Matthew chapter 7. Enter by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. So he says there's a road, there's a path, there's a highway, and it's a big wide one. And there's a lot of people on that highway, and they're telling you, come on, get on this highway. This is the cool highway, man. This will lead you to happiness and joy and pleasure. This is the highway. This is the road to be on. Hugh Hefner died this week, right? He was on that highway of free sex, baby. Get on this highway. This is the fun way. But that road leads to destruction. Verse 14, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are few who find it. It's hard in 2017 to do things God's way. You're a weirdo. You're a freak. You're a nut job. You believe in Jesus? You follow the Bible? What's wrong with you? Come to the modern age. Come to the modern thinking. Come to the modern logic. So you can get on that road and you can follow modern logic and modern thinking and modern cultures and modern ideas. But I hate to break it to you, that road leads to destruction. God's way is narrow. It's through a person, Jesus Christ. And it's narrow, and it's difficult. And the Bible describes following Jesus is like taking up our cross and following. And there's times, man, where there is this internal wrestling that's going to go on between the flesh and the spirit, and it's hard to do what the spirit wants to do, and we're wrestling with the devil. But I'm going to tell you what, getting on that road and following Jesus, it's completely worth it. You just gotta see past all. You gotta see past all the sights and past all the noise. Because I'm going to tell you what, the minute you die and open your eyes and you see Jesus, you'll say, I'm glad I made that choice. That was a good choice. Was it easy? No. Was it hard? Yes. Was I mocked? Yes. Was I criticized? Yes. Was I seen as kind of weird and obsolete? Yes. But man, it was worth it. It was worth it. So my challenge for you today, and I'm begging you, is choose God's way. And God's way is Jesus. And He will lead you to life everlasting. For God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son. Whoever believes in Him would not perish, but have everlasting life. And a lot of times we kind of stop right there, don't we? We stop at that verse. But listen to what else He says. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. He who believes in Him is not condemned. You're not under condemnation anymore. But he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Follow Jesus to the road that leads to eternal life. Choose man's ways over God's ways. Let's bow our heads for prayer this morning. I don't know what road you're on, but I want you to stop and think about it a minute. What road are you on? Are you on the Jesus road? Are you following Him? Are you pursuing Him? Or are you on a broad road, kind of following culture and public opinion, even the opinion of a man? Where's that road going to lead you to? I want to encourage you this morning, if you're here, to make a decision to get on the Jesus road. So maybe in your seat where you are, you just pray a simple prayer like this: Lord, I know that I am on the wrong road. I've been following the ways of this world. But my eyes were open to the truth today. And I want to get on the right road. And Jesus, I believe you're that road. So today I ask forgiveness for my sins. And I put my faith and trust in Jesus and Jesus alone to save me. Please keep me on the right road till I see you in heaven. Maybe you're in here and you're saved, but you're making some really poor decisions. You're heading down a bad path. You're letting your emotions get the best of you. Maybe today was a wake-up call. Maybe God spoke to you in some way today. Maybe people have been trying to warn you and plead with you, but you've ignored them. Maybe you just need to say, God, I hear you. I hear you.
Thank you again for listening to our series on 1 Samuel with Pastor Mark Doss. If you have questions about today's message, please contact our church office at info@topekabaptist.org. Give us a call at 785-862-0988 or check us out online at www.topekabaptist.org.